as far as a starting point. We are just 6 weeks away from All In, and we are starting to get a little bit, I don't know, squeaky bum time, I'd say, for AEW when it comes to the numbers. But we do have an AEW All In 2024 ticket update. We at the minute, as far as tickets, we have 51,314 as the setup, with 40,964 of those sold. That's 530 since the last WrestleTix update. Credit to at WrestleTix on Twitter for these bits. That was 8 days ago when it was 530 less. So yeah, right now we've got 10,350 tickets available with the current setup. JP, the thing that blew my mind was when I saw that it was only 45 days until the show. I feel like we'd spent about 3 months talking ticket information last year until by the time we were 45 days out, we were probably panicking at that point about the build and what the matches were going to be, and kidding ourselves that Kenny Omega was going to be having a gigantic singles match. But we're a little bit further on, I suppose, as far as the creative goes when we talk Dynamite later. But yeah, 40,000, still can't break that 41,000 seal as far as Wembley tickets go. And I actually think an underreported one, JP, maybe we'll talk them in unison. Again, latest update is a week old at this point, but that Collision and Dynamite in Cardiff still hasn't sold out. Again, not panic stations. It will, but they've still got 1,000 tickets out for that one, and that's kind of shocking to me. Like, imagine 2 years ago, I told you AEW was about to debut in Cardiff. Like, we'd have bets on how quickly the tickets would get snapped up, especially if it's an arena with a 5,000. It's a 4,236 capacity. It's not even 5, barely 4. They've distributed only 3,156 tickets since they went on sale. It's been about a month now, hasn't it? We do have 47 days. Well, it was 47 days at the time of this update, so about 40 days until Dynamite and Collision in Cardiff. But still 1,000 tickets to shift, JP. One of those where it's a bit like, dare I say it, the Drew Scotland thing. They're gonna go. The closer we get, people are gonna pick them up, aren't they? Like, it's gonna be a case of maybe people locally or people just excited for the All-In weekend. I don't think 1,000 is a tough ask for AEW, but maybe tells you something, those two numbers. All-In still not passing 41,000, and Cardiff not just being the immediate sellout you might have imagined a couple of years ago.
It's incredible, isn't it? I was convinced it would just be a complete sellout. I did have reservations when we saw the ticket prices and went out on the pre-sale. I'm shocked, but I'm more shocked by the Cardiff number, surprisingly. Now, it is interesting, I think, in terms of like them doing 163 tickets 7 days ago. I think, and you can look at that in the Wembley, that there is at least a pattern that in the last week or so, as it's coincided with some of the better telly, and we know some of the matches that are coming into it, some of these tickets are shifting. But I'm shocked about the Cardiff one, because you would think to yourself there'd be a lot of people in and around that area who would be perhaps not making their way down to London for the weekend, just simply because of cost, timing, travel, and whatnot. And this would be like kind of a nice fix of going, oh, okay, well, I'll go to this show instead. If this was a year ago, those tickets would have sold out in the pre-sale. They just would have gone, and that would have been it. If we're talking a year ago, the fact that Wembley, and again, it's like 40 days out, it's basically half the amount of tickets sold of what it did last year. Does say something. Now, I don't think like my prediction was, I think mine and Matty's were around like 65,000 for this. It's not hitting that. I'd almost be very amazed if it hit 50,000 at this stage. I don't, even with matches being announced and a course being set, and as we'll get to in a bit, the TV being good, and feeling like they're getting things right. I'm not saying it's too little, too late, but it feels like it's already sort of set in stone what they're going to be selling. And that, I wonder if Cardiff is as much to do with ticket price as well. Like,
yeah, the ones that are left are like 125 to 150 plus. Apparently, it's none of the cheap ones.
Yeah, exactly. And is there going to be a lot of like? I imagine there'll be some interesting stuff happening on a big go home show. It'll be a livelier crowd than the one we had in Calgary this week. That'd be for certain there. But I mean, I was looking at the Wembley tickets. I was thinking to myself, this is your doing when you've said, actually, we need to get these in place. On the resale market, it's $27.25 outside of Ticketmaster costs. I call it 50 quid because that's what they'll do. Because I'm looking to buy one for me and my eldest son.
Right.
For Wembley, but 27.25. You're thinking, fucking, what can you go to at Wembley that's 27.25? You don't go to the FA Vars for that fucking price, let alone like a kind of like a big show like this. So, are those tickets going to get snapped up? I mean, if you look at the map on there, there's a lot of blue in and around that kind of like, dare I say, those inner circle seats that are sort of just below that sort of first tier down, and like there, you know. You're imagining that those are tickets that are going to be costing like a couple of hundred as well. They're not shifting. And I think this is the thing. If they want these tickets to sell, they're going to have to try and make this work. This is the big point in all of this. They're going to need to start actually publicizing stuff over here. And by that, that doesn't mean a what I would consider to be a quite lazy media campaign of let's put some adverts on buses and let's do some tube posters with the odd TV spot. They could get away with it last year because they'd sold so many in the meantime. This time around, they're going to have to actually work. And what that means is getting AEW out there and as part of the media presence. And you mentioned it earlier on about Steph's article in terms of like, particularly the relationship with the media is the thing that I really took from it. And I thought they're going to have to actually put in the hard yards here. They're going to have to start offering out their talent for lots and lots of interviews. They're going to have to get people onto radio, TV. I mean, the fact that Tony Storm and Mariah May should be having a pull apart on Loose Women, that's a fucking no-brainer, shouldn't it? Like, bit of blood. But like Talk Sport, stuff like that. Yeah, all of that.
Now, Vanessa, bloody hero.
Oh, yeah. She's all over the place, Vanessa Feltz, these days. She never really went away. God bless her. But this is it. I don't know if they're going to do it because I don't know if they haven't got their ducks in a row to do it. These aren't things that sort of really come to mind. And that's what it's going to require if they want to shift these tickets. And I just don't see it. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know. Tom says here in the chat they'll hit 50. There'll be a mad dash. He's short of it, 48 lowest. When Pollock asked me that at the weekend, what do I think they're going to pass 50? And I was like, yeah, surely. And then I was like, maybe. And then I was like, I reckon they'll come close enough that they'll be able to sell it as 50. It's still going to be a lot of empty seats, isn't it? I'm pretty convinced they're going to end up like, you know, there's going to be plenty of tarpaulin. Obviously, the setup right now is 51,000, so I think they just won't open those other sections that would make it a bigger space. So they'll just use those tricks, won't they? But I think that's the ceiling. I've seen this talking point from Connor a lot. Not from Connor particularly, just from a few different people. You know, last payday, you know, coming up before the show. A lot of people waiting. I was talking to Joe last night about it, and he was asking if any of us had tickets, and I was like, he was like, does anybody like to? You know, anyone on the podcast got tickets yet? And I was like, nope. JP doesn't. Gareth doesn't. Matty doesn't. And then I was thinking, I don't think the Ogdens do. Don't think Martin does. And I was going through the list of all of our kind of associated group, and I was like, I don't think anybody does. Like anybody I know. And most of our chat seem to keep saying, oh, you know, we're going to wait till the day. And again, that's half my worry. Too many of us wait until the day, and then we're all fighting for you know, the £30 tickets or whatever is available on StubHub on the day. So there does seem to be a quiet majority of people who are all kind of feeling the same way. But yeah, Steph says yeah, Dave said they're hoping to sell more in the last week with talent in the UK to promote. I mean, that's a big ask the last week, right before, as Steph says, I said, yeah, a bit late, right before Wembley to expect that to happen. I'm with you in that. All the different things you've mentioned that they should be doing, you know, proper media, a proper push. It's not the last week. All of those things should be happening. But that's going to make a minor difference, I think, at this point. That's going to be the difference between it being 58,000 and maybe, if you're lucky, 61,000. It's not going to be the difference at this point between it being 50,000 and 60,000, is it? Like, very clearly, this is not as hot a ticket as last year. Very clearly, that was always going to be the case. And, you know, a lot of the things that happened last year, probably part of that, and just generally, AEW softening as a hot ticket it is going to be a factor when it comes to that. But yeah, they're going to have to do real promotion, absolutely, just to make sure it's not, 48,000 wouldn't be an embarrassing number, but it's not as good as a selling point, is it, as we sold our whole allocation if it's 51,300, whatever the number ends up being. So they're going to have to, maybe pull some of those tricks and maybe get some of the families in. And I don't know, can you do what you call it? Can they give away tickets for Wembley? Can they do, what's it called, grab hat thingy? What's the thing that they give out tickets to families and stuff like that, where you get like 2 2-for-1 tickets
Yeah.
and all that all the local promotions do. Maybe some of that, give some out in raffles, give some tickets out to the local councils. Maybe we can find Groupon. That's it. Maybe we can find a way to use Groupon. Maybe just go like full like Mega Slam. Get those lads on the case, JP. Maybe they can sort it.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. They're going to have to do stuff like that, but you don't. I think the main thing is it's almost like from here up until the day of the show, they need to be a constant presence outside of Triller TV and ITV4. Like they need to be in places all the time where you're hearing about AEW, you hearing about maybe you tying it in with the success of wrestling and everything else at the minute, and WWE being a hot ticket, or so the narrative goes. But I just don't think the organization is there for them to do it, or they don't think of it kind of being that way. And that's always been something that's kind of scared me, because last year there should have been, like, of the lessons they learned from last year, one of them definitely is they need to get a card in place. That is, but it's also about the fact that they haven't realized what an underserved market this is. And it should have been like, actually, we need to have people out there kind of all of the time. They need to be plugging and it's too late to plug like AEW when Fulham are doing their opening game of the season, because when's that? That's mid-August. Yeah, it'd be like the week before. It won't make any bloody difference at that point. Like, it needs to be absolutely like kind of massive. And we should say as well, 50,000 for a wrestling New Japan would fucking kill for this.
Yeah,
they don't even half sell out the Tokyo Dome and everything else. But I think the expectation has been set from last year, and I think our fear was at the time is this the peak? This is the business peak, and we're watching this in real time. And they've not realised it. They've kind of thought, oh, well, we can do this next year because they're going to be so starved, they'll just come back. And it's like, well, actually, no, there's a whole other series of factors you take into play. And it's those, what I almost think of like lost months, where basically fuck all happened. And from a creative perspective, it was all over the place. Looking at you, MJF. And it feels to me like they've wasted a lot of time, and not necessarily goodwill, but they haven't caught the imagination of people. And that's a very good reason.
If I can ask a question, like, because I'm not reporting this as news. I've just heard conjecture from more than one person I would trust on it, of AEW looking at All In being not in the UK next year. And that is not me. That is not reporting anything. That is just, a bit of talk about, oh yeah, I heard they were maybe looking at this location. Oh yeah, I thought they were maybe looking at that location. Will All In be in the UK forever? A question for you. Will it even be there next year? Because again, 50,000, if it does that, isn't a failure. For me, if anything, I felt like last year I always said it at the time, I couldn't get my brain to accept that we're looking at like 60-something thousand or 70,000 or whatever the real number really is when it comes to it. But I couldn't get my brain to accept it because there were so many red seats. And there's just something in me that's like, I don't like looking at empty seats. I hate it. It just makes it look lesser than, despite the fact there's fucking, record numbers of people in this one building at this one time. I just don't want it to look shit. And if there's a lot of red seats about, 40,000 in a 70, 80,000 seater, looks shit, doesn't it? No matter how many people you try and tell yourself are there. And I think there's got to be a floor for what is acceptable to run, at Wembley. So, like, to the point, JP, do you see it being in the UK next year? If it is, do you see it being at Wembley? Would you put any stock in them looking at other locations? It'd be a kick in the teeth if All In became not a British tradition and just became something, they did in other countries, because they're like, oh, we could go to, this is just an example, Australia and fill a stadium. We could go to Canada and we could fill a stadium. Maybe not these days. We could go to somewhere else and fill a stadium. Like, they could go that route instead, and we could lose it.
I wouldn't be surprised if they are looking at it. I think that's more them not seeing the wood for the trees. Because as you've mentioned, if they say went to Canada, they're not going to do that number. They're not going to do anything close to it. I'd struggle to see them selling out Scotiabank, frankly. I think that they would do. Let alone, is it Rogers Stadium? That's the new Sky Dome?
Rogers Centre, yeah.
Basically, what I like to think
that's the one I was looking at going, what's that Rogers Centre there? It's got a dome, in the sky. Oh, it's the Sky Dome. Okay, yeah. I get it now.
Not the only dome we'll mention this week, but this is the thing. I think not only is it like a case of, this isn't like some sort of act of, it's more I think it's more a testament to how little work they've put into the UK market outside of having like British wrestlers than it being like some sort of flaw. Like the potential is there. There is the wrestling fan base is here. The European fan base is on the doorstep. Like, where else they're going to go? I don't think they would do it in Australia. I think the time zone thing would start fucking things up as well. If they went to Craven Cottage, that's a hell of a downgrade, like from Wembley Stadium as well. Because, as we've said before, Wembley is the pinnacle of all of the stadiums in the UK. So, do I think that they would look at it? Yeah. Do I think somebody needs to go? No. What we need to do is we need to do a proper concentrated marketing campaign. We need to look at the UK as an audience. We need to be over here on a semi-regular basis, building a fan base up who are rabid for an AEW product, doing things like that, which actually is the harder work rather than, fuck it, we'll go somewhere else then. I think that's the problem. And it's also the fact that they're renting this relatively cheap. So what did we hear last year? It needs to sell about 25,000 tickets before it started to become profitable. Well, it's already profitable. It's already done their biggest gate of the year. It will do well for pay-per-view buys because of just the nature of this card and the matches that are being built up as well. The problem isn't the UK for this one. Normally, the answer for most questions in recent years has the problem been the UK? Very much so. Like, you could answer that in everything from like a political perspective and everything else. However, this time round, I don't think that is the case. I think the problem is, and it's the same with all of the markets they run, is that eventually there just comes a point where they kind of have, they've either exhausted it in terms of the locations they go to in the States and Canada, and they don't put in the hard yards.
And I should say, you know, I've just heard that talk and I've heard people go, oh yeah, they were maybe looking at this, they were looking at that, and my attitude throughout it has been, that's interesting, but it's Tony Khan. Like, he fucking loves the tradition, doesn't he? Like, he's been hard pressed to move All Out a week later. You know, he loves us. Or we're in Thanksgiving in Chicago. You know, All In is a Wembley show. He loves that. Maybe there's something we don't know about that, you know, might force them out and might force them to think of other options. But I think as a betting man, I'd probably say even if it dropped to like 40,000, I think Tony Khan, man of tradition, will be setting up at Wembley in 3 years, and it'd be, even if it was like 20 at that point, it'd be like, well, it's still good, it's still Wembley, it's our tradition, we need to keep it up, unless he's forced out. But yeah, interesting talking point, really. And, something to keep an eye on. But I suppose there you go, old school grapple weekend show there. Plenty of talk on Wembley. We'll keep monitoring those tickets as they go on, and who knows, maybe Payday will give them something of a spike, but not the only AEW news to talk about today, JP.
No.